This is a segment where we review the papers, local and international. And I have here with me, religiously or constantly, as if you would like, constantly, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Dee. How are you today?
Good.
We survived the first day of the protest.
We did.
Here we are.
It was hard getting even to the office today.
To the office. Okay. Well, I didn't have any problem at all. I take the express, so there's no barricade on the express. Well, this morning, to look at the newspaper, we have Eniola Akinkuotu. He is the chief international correspondent of the Africa Report. Glad to welcome to the program, Eniola.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. And this day, we'll look at the story. Glencore's billionaire ex-oil head accused of bribing an NPC. FG officials. He's charged with corruption in the UK. Alex Bird, that's his name, the former head of oil at Glencore PLC, was charged with fraud in the UK with 4 other employees, or ex-employees too. Bird was a top executive for more than a decade until he left in 2019. He was charged by UK's Serious Fraud Office of conspiring to make corrupt payments for Glencore operations in Nigeria and other West African countries. He conspired to pay off government officials and employees of state-owned firms in Nigeria between 2010 and 2014, and in Cameroon between 2007 and 2014. This is a very high-profile case to be dragged in public after decades of service and ending of one's career with bribery allegations and conviction. This is the most damaging thing, Eniola.
Oh, certainly. And one wonders what happened to the people here in Nigeria who received the bribes. You know, we've been talking about NNPC. I think it was Sanusi I interviewed some years ago who said that even an angel cannot run the NNPC, honestly. Because of
what
this.
A statement.
Yes, that's what Sanusi told me back in some 4 years ago when I interviewed him. And so you're seeing this again. It's a situation where Nigerian officials collect bribes. In fact, this keeps happening. They collect bribes, you know, they go scot-free. While those who give them the bribes abroad, they are convicted or they pay fines. Remember the Halliburton scandal?
Yes.
Halliburton paid huge fines in the United States. The largest fine ever at that point in time, over $1 billion. In Nigeria here, nobody paid any fine. Nobody has been. Yeah, at some point, the EFCC said they were going to make some arrests and all that. We didn't hear anything about it again. So it shows, you know, the weakness of Nigeria's institutions.
What it says is that it's difficult to do business in these shores. Because when you want to stay in operations, you want to carry out your business, you know, properly and in a transparent manner. But at every turn, government officials demand that you have to pay them in order to continue to exist as a company. It's tough. What do you expect companies to do, Ndi? I don't know.
You remember the governor of Delta State, Ibori? It was only abroad that he was convicted. With everything he did, here he wasn't convicted. And then you remember the PNID. What made PNID, what made them carry out that plea was because it was an inside job. It was certain Nigerians here helped them until the Buhari government said, no, we can't pay this. In fact, some people are even insisting that they should pay and said, no, we can't pay this. They went to court abroad. It was there that it was quashed. It's just like Eniola said, how does this guy get to be found guilty of fraud abroad in the UK and his accomplices here? Are we saying that nobody knows anything about them? Our justice system has to be tweaked, something has to be done about it, and then institutions, of course, it's a pity that this goes on and on and on. And this is what makes business, conducting business in Nigeria, tough and makes things not to seem to work here in Nigeria.
Let's look at the figure. It says that Glencore agreed to pay $1.5 billion to, sorry, that one was a penalty. So $1.5 billion is a penalty that was slammed on it by U.S. investigators, because the investigations were on for a couple of years. And then in Nigeria, Glencore paid $52 million in bribes to government officials. Do you know what $52 million can do for a country? Money that is supposed to be used to develop your economic environment or your economy is being siphoned into private pockets. Eniola, I mean,
it's mind-boggling, really. It's mind-boggling, and it's be good to even get the details of this particular contract. You know, when Blinken came last year, he said that that's the U.S. Secretary of State, that the three things that were hampering investments into Nigeria. He talked about the FX rates. He spoke about corruption. And that's one thing you know, Nigeria has consistently been ranked low on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. It's one of the major things that are hampering investments into this country. When Tinubu went to
because not
Qatar,
everybody wants to
yes, and once you're not willing
bribes.
to pay,
yes,
once you're not willing to pay, you don't get it. In fact, it's almost impossible to get a government contract without either play. You can't even get a government contract.
Yes.
Let's be very, very honest. Except maybe you are very close friends with the person who is issuing the contract, and at the end of the day, he will give you kickbacks. So it's almost impossible to get contracts from government without paying bribes.
Even the federal government says here that Glencore, a British mining and trading group, was expected to pay Nigeria a 50 million penalty for bribery.
Then what happens to the Nigerian officials who took the money?
That hasn't been paid. And then,
yes.
very good question. What happens to Fabami is talking about the Glencore, which is a foreign company, and then of course, what's his name, Beard. But if you don't, it's like what you have. We call it the whited sepulcher. The outside is clean, but the inside is messy, is dirty, and the inside is most important. So we're looking on the outside, and they seem to be solving the problem with their own people. But what are we doing about the inside? Who are the people behind this? Who are the co-conspirators? Why are we not getting them to pay the price for running the country aground?
There's no country that can develop this way, and that's part of the problem the African countries face. And let's look at the $1.5 billion penalty by the U.S. The reason why these penalties are very stiff is so that companies can desist from doing or taking this kind of actions, you know, in regard to how they operate. Perhaps this also needs to happen in Nigeria. If you're a government official and you're caught, in addition to surrendering the money or the bribe that you took, maybe you need to pay fines as well.
You know, this cuts across all strata, not just this Glencore thing. The fact that deterrent is almost non-existent. So people get away with almost murder. And so it continues. It becomes a revolving cycle of impunity, of corruption. If people, just like you said, get punished, they find a way to get people punished for this endemic corruption, then people will take a cue because of the high price that you pay for engaging in this. You step back a bit.
But can we also, look at the judicial side of things? Earlier on, you made allusions to the Ibori issue. You know that the EFCC tried to arraign him. In fact, they arraigned him and then he was let go until he traveled to Dubai. From Dubai, he was then repatriated to the UK, where he was then convicted. He was let go by the judiciary, more or less. And you have situations where EFCC has tried to prosecute some of these oil thieves. Most of them, go scot-free. One of them that was accused of subsidy theft and all that, he was convicted, and then the conviction was obtained at the Court of Appeal. The former GMD of NNPC, that's Andrew Yakubu, $9 million was in cash, was confiscated from him.
Wow. What do you do with $9 million?
Yes, $9 million. It was kept in a village in Kaduna State, in a village, in fact, a dilapidated house. And that's where EFCC was able to recover the money. And the court has ordered that the money should be returned to him.
It also shows that this country has no business being poor. You have all those monies in private pockets, in private hands.
Yeah, that's the issue. All this money is in private hands, and they're getting away, in quote, with murder. Because it's murder of a sort. when you don't have money to, we're going to talk about food and diet, when you don't have money to support systems, to make people live better, it's murder, you know, in a way, by what do you call it? Indirectly.
Yes.
You know.
Okay, well, it's a very sobering story, but it happens all the time. Let's move on to, well, we have one more story in this day. It's not on the front page, but it's worth mentioning. Atiku condemns hashtag Igbo must go online campaign, says it's troubling. So there's been an online campaign on Igbo must go. We also remember that last year, Igbo people were attacked in Lagos during the elections. But Eniola, this is a dangerous trend, and it looks like we're playing with fire in this country. The consequences of hate campaign, bigotry, and inflammatory rhetoric. You know, we have examples all over the world to see what happens when authorities allow this type of languages to go on unchecked.
There's this page on social media, I think Lagospedia.
Lagospedia.
Yeah, it's Lagospedia that, you know, they now use.
They should, that person should be, those people should be arrested.
It is appalling. It's really disgusting. And it's, as you said earlier, it's a hangover of last year's election, where you had the likes of MC Olomo coming out to say, oh, Iyachukura, if you don't plan on voting for us, stay at home. We saw what happened on the election day, because after Tinubu had lost in Lagos, there was this rise in xenophobia. And a lot of Igbos were threatened. They were asked not to come out and vote, to come and exercise their franchise. You had state government appointees coming out to join such xenophobic protests against the Igbos. There are pictures all over the internet anyway. And so that has continued. That's what you are seeing here. That threat came out, I think it was 4 or 5 days ago. The state government didn't say anything about it. It was until Atiku Abubakar issued a statement that the state government then issued a follow-up statement that, okay, that we condemn this and all that. Still, there's been no word about any arrest. Recall too that last year, there was, after the that election, nobody was arrested, despite trending videos and all that. The US government actually condemned it then. Wole Soyinka had condemned it. I think the UK government also condemned it. But no one has been arrested, no one has been prosecuted over that. And this is how pogroms start.
Yes.
When you start,
and the Lagos state government is not doing enough about this.
They're not doing enough. That's the truth.
That's why immediately he mentioned it. I said, tell me, give me a reason. Because this does not, you said, freedom of expression. This goes beyond freedom of expression.
No, this is not freedom of expression.
You are inciting people. And this is anarchy on the boiling, on the boiling pot. Atiku said, in fact, we know the story of Rwanda, the Hutsis and the Tutsis. That's why in Rwanda today, when you're filling forms, you don't mention Tutsi, you don't mention Hutsi, you do not. The man, that's one thing he has done in Rwanda that's quite fantastic. And it's Atiku is speaking. Atiku should not be the only one speaking. This is not just about Igbos. This is about Nigeria. You should be, in fact, an Igbo man won election, I know him personally, in Lagos, in the House of Assembly, under PDP, before he now moved to APC. An Igbo man won an election. And in Lagos, the heartbeat of business in Lagos are the Igbos. You can't, in fact, Ojukwu at one time came to Lagos and cried when he went to, what do you call it, trade fair. And said, see what the Igbos put down there.
So let's leave that aside.
I'm talking about the fact that...
Let's talk about the basic humanity. Because just the basic humanity of, we have a complex, diverse country. And, authorities preach all the time about one Nigeria. We have to be united. We cannot be divided. But when the same authorities do not say anything when this is happening. And then the interesting thing also is that a lot of those people, they have relations that live in New York, that live in London, that live in Paris, in the developed world. And they carry on their businesses, without any problems.
And nobody has told them to go. Let me read out. Let me just read out what Atiku said before you come. He said, "I call on the Nigerian government and relevant authorities to take immediate and strong action against those inciting such hatred and division. It is imperative to investigate, arrest, and prosecute individuals promoting ethnic discrimination and violence."
Yes, and you'll jump in.
I mean, You call, sorry to digress a bit. You remember that the UK elections last month, I think about 5 Nigerians won elections
Yeah.
into
Yes.
the parliament there, and people were rejoicing that, oh, yes, we are, achieving great strides over there. And all of a sudden, you get here and it's the opposite. You don't want, to embrace diversity in your own country, your own state. And the state government keeps, doesn't do anything about it. They just keep quiet. They promote it secretly. That's what's going on. And most times, these things, it's during election years that these things are heightened. Recall too that it's not just 2023. Even in 2015, when Jimmy Agbaje was contesting too,
Yes.
they're calling him an Igbo candidate.
Yes.
And
I
all
think
that.
his mother Igbo. So
No,
No,
both parents are Igbo.
Because this guy.
Gbadebo Road survivor.
Gbadebo.
His mother is Igbo. So we need to, stop all this nonsense.
But
What
Anyola,
to
that
stop all
shows,
that nonsense?
Anyola, that shows the danger, because you can be wrongly profiled.
Exactly.
You are a Yoruba person and
There
someone
was-
comes
there's
up to
an
you and hacks
influencer.
you down.
There was,
you
there
know?
was an influencer, CCME. She has over 1 million followers on social media. So she said she made her way to polling unit to vote. That was last year. And they said, oh, you look Igbo. She said, no, that she's, no, she said, no, you look Igbo, that don't come here to vote. And they turned her back. And
That's
that happened
dangerous.
to so many people last year too.
Let me even finish this man's sentence. The rule of law must prevail, and those found guilty of incitement should face the full extent of legal consequences. Atiku is being a statesman here.
Right.
It's I don't know how to put it. That maybe you could say it's too early, but these are the kind of things that immediately it is noticed. The government of Lagos State and the government of the center, whether it's happening in the north or in the south or in the east or an Hausa person or Igbo or Ishekiri, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It talks about Nigeria's
Okay.
diversity. Nobody should be discriminated against where he or she stays or resides.
Oh, okay.
It's really terrible and
So,
dangerous.
More people in authority should speak up.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to Vanguard newspaper this morning. We'll be looking at the protests. Protests, 14 killed as Yobe, Kano, Borno declare curfew. A lot of commercial activities were halted as pro and anti groups clashed in Lagos. We were here watching the protests. Some of us were involved. Finally, it took off yesterday, even when the government did everything possible to stop it. Well, it happened and it continues today. And you had an experience in the field.
I was there through yesterday, and it started peacefully and then just got out of hand. So the protesters converged on the Moshood Abiola stadium, and then the police commissioner came with his team and told them
here
that,
in Abuja.
yes, here in Abuja, and told them to go inside. And I said, oh no, that they're not going inside, that they're going to stay on the fringes of the stadium, that they're afraid that the police are going to lock them inside. Recall that on the eve of this protest, of this planned protest, the FCT authorities led by Nyesom Wike, they got an ex parte injunction, telling all protesters that they must be confined to that stadium. And so when they got there yesterday, they didn't want to go in. But one funny thing about that particular order too is that, it just said on unknown persons, the Take It Back movement and all that. So it was quite difficult to enforce too, because unknown persons are not, they're the defendants, but when you say unknown persons, they are not a juristic personality. And so they were saying, oh, we have not been served and all that. Then the thing started to change when some pro-government protesters came to that same venue yesterday.
Always a problem.
I interviewed some
anti.
of them. In fact, the video has gone viral. One of them said that, he collected 5,000. I plumbed my head. I said he took 5,000 naira, and they promised him more money if he comes for the protest and all that. And when people thought that, these anti-government protesters are here, they decided that, look, we're not going to remain here anymore. And then they made their way to Eagle Square, and that's where things just got out of hand. Where I was, the police fired at least 50 tear gas canisters. I inhaled some of the tear gas. I almost collapsed yesterday, actually. But by and large, I think in town, the police were very, very much professional. It was the protests on the fringes, on the satellite towns, the Kubwa Expressway, the Kugbo, all those places, Maraba. That's where we saw a lot of violence, because people wanted to come in to the city center, and the police had formed a barricade, don't want them to come in. And so this one started fighting back. And of course, things got out of hand. Another thing to point out too is that some of these pro-government protesters, they didn't also use this Moshood Abiola stadium. They were protesting in front of Tinubu's campaign office, the defunct campaign office.
Tinubu Shettima
Yes, they were led by
yes.
Minister of State for Police Affairs.
Yes.
That's Iman Ibrahim. And the police gave them security, their protection there, even though a court order had also said all protests should be confined to the stadium. So you see that there was some sort of double standard there too. But I mean,
good that you brought that out.
By and large, it was initially peaceful, and then when things got out of hand too, I actually left. I'm hoping that these protests don't go on for too long, because people lost a lot yesterday.
Yes.
It did a lot of damage to the economy too. CPP Muda Yusuf, the former DG of LCCI, estimates that about $200 million has been lost every day to
yes.
this protest. Banks were shut, schools, seaports, airports, and I mean, it was even hospitality business too. Everything was just...
so Nigeria is an interesting country. It's a country where you can buy people to do things. So it's always the case that when a genuine protest is organized, government people will pay others to come and do a counter protest. So it means that most times it's difficult to have one voice in Nigeria, and that's part of the problem. It's so easy to divide the people along whatever affiliations or lines that you want to do so.
And that is the danger. That is why protesters take with pinch of salt whatever government says. That's where the trust deficit is. How do you play double standards? You give a group that's supposed to go, in the first instance, why should it, okay, maybe you could, I wanted to say, why should government begin to protest? Okay, it's freedom of speech, freedom of association, fine. But why do you then play double standards? Actually, there was one that said, I did not know that we were going to protest against the protesters who were against the government. If I had known, I wouldn't have joined them until I got there. Now, there was a media release, by the way, in Niger State. Someone said his uncle, his uncle, because they were moving forward, and then the police stopped them. Then a stray bullet hit him on his Okada, that's motorcycle. He wasn't part of the protest, and the man died. Niger State, you have four people, 4 people died in Maiduguri, Borno, and then 3 in Kaduna State, and then 1 in Kebbi State. Now, this media release, planned nationwide citizens' mass protest achieved its purpose before commencement. This was coming from one of their leaders, the Take Back government, Onoboruwa, that they should probably step it down. But then, this media release encapsulates the challenge that citizens of the country have with the government, talking about deficit in trust. They said, yeah, we agree. But you see, the point is, government will want us to stop the protest and make commitments that they never keep.
Right.
So that what we're going to do is to get the government to dialogue with us. In fact, somebody this morning was talking about Wike. Yes, on Wike, that the way his tone, his demeanor, his body language now became humble, because he's calling for dialogue. And that's what these people are saying. It has to be a dialogue. The government has to make commitments that whatever they agree will be done. Because invariably, what eventually happens, the government makes commitment that they never keep to. And that's where the grouse is with the protesters.
And in the APC-controlled state, it was... It got out of hand, Yobe, Borno, and it's a Kano.
Yeah. And the northern states.
The northern states, generally.
They then had to impose curfew.
Curfew in Kano, curfew in
APC is in government.
Yobe,
So it says that their people are not happy at all with them.
Well, it goes beyond party affiliation.
It goes beyond.
You look at a lot of the places where it turned violent, you see that these places are, places that are witnessing high level of insecurity and high poverty rates.
Which affects their source of livelihood.
Yes, exactly. Look at Borno State, for instance. The police actually said it earlier on that they had intelligence that Boko Haram was going to infiltrate the protest in Borno State and that there's going to be attacks. Many of us, just dismissed it, thinking that was propaganda, but it happened yesterday. And it also proves to you that, look, terrorism is still very, very, very active. You know, Boko Haram, I don't, whether it's Boko Haram or not, I don't even know, but still very, very much active there in Borno State.
Because it's just explosives that somebody planted it. And,
yeah.
16 lives were
16
lost.
lives lost.
Wow.
In one day.
Yeah, because those people, these people in the north, somebody was discussing with me, a northerner, he said they are affected drastically because their source of livelihood is the farm.
Yes.
And so because of insecurity, they're not able to go to the farm. Bandits come during harvest time and tell them to give them 90% of what they have harvested. If you refuse, they'll kill you and eventually take everything. So because they can't go to the farm, their source of livelihood is affected. And because of it, they said, never, if you watch the history of Nigeria, they're doesn't usually get into protest.
Exactly.
But this time around, they said because of this, we're getting into protest. And that's what we're seeing. All right, we're halfway gone. We'll be back and we'll continue with this paper review. Don't go away. All right, glad to have you back. It's still daybreak and we're still reviewing the papers, both local and international, Constance.
Yes, let's move on to this morning. There are so many stories, difficult to choose. Let's look at New Telegraph. IMF, Nigeria, others squeezed by raising interest rates or rising interest rate payments on debt. So according to this article, many low-income countries are battling with high interest rates and debt redemption problems. Nigeria is one of such low-income countries that remains heavily indebted to the tune of $91.46 billion, according to a June report by the Debt Management Office. Nigeria spent 7.8 trillion naira to service debt obligations in 2023. That's a 121% increase incurred in the previous year. Well, available data shows there's a constant increase. This is an old story. You know, it continues. There's no indication that there will be a downward trend in debt management, in debt service, in collecting loans that we cannot pay for. The other day we were talking about NNPC looking for another crude oil loan swap in order to get money to continue its operations. And Yola, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you know, some days ago when the administration was trying to dissuade people from taking to the streets, they said they had reduced the debt to revenue ratio from about 93% to maybe 65% or so. So they said they're doing a fantastic job. But what the IMF is saying now seems to show that, look, we are nowhere near where we ought to be.
The same IMF that gives you loans.
Exactly, the same IMF that gives conditional loans all the time. I don't know why. And the World Bank still wants to give, I think yesterday they approved $500 million or so again, you know. So they are the ones that are also enabling these countries, these small countries, you know, encouraging them to take loans. And at the end of the day, you turn around to condemn the loans that they are taking. Most of these loans are not even sustainable. Let's even say, okay, at least the IMF, with the World Bank, those ones even do debt forgiveness. China doesn't do debt forgiveness. And right now, the continent, that's Africa, is indebted to China now over $1.5 trillion. And most of them will not be able to pay back.
You know, Ndi, I would like you to come in here, but under President Olusegun Obasanjo, the finance minister then tried to manage debt for the country, not only at the federal level, at the state. Because as the federal government is taking loans, the state governments are also recklessly across board collecting loans. So I think they tried as much as possible with the Debt Management Office to manage how much debt or how much loans different governors were collecting from both locally and internationally. Now I think that is, you know, that's off the window or out the window.
And that was when Nigeria got the loan reprieve from IMF and the other world financial
well, international creditors.
International. Yeah, that's why I said other world financing institutions. And then she was always crying that government should learn to save. But the state governments will always say, let's share. Let's share. She was always crying about that. And the point here is that it's the IMF thing that almost destroyed. Argentina is in a hell of a squeeze because of the IMF problem. And they keep on encouraging you. It's like credit? Wanted to take credit.
Well, it's your prerogative to take or not. Nobody forces you.
What do you even do with these loans anyway? That's another thing.
That's where the problem is. When you take loans to pay debt, you take loans to do a current expenditure, instead of taking loans to build infrastructure and invest things that will make money back.
Exactly.
Plowed into the system.
Look at Kaduna State now. You know, Rufai is under fire now.
Yes.
They said he took loans of running into hundreds of millions of dollars, and that they didn't really know what he did with it. And now his successor, Governor Obasani, is saying that, look, he can barely pay salaries.
Yes.
So it's also
well, it is, that Kaduna thing is a kind of political because
as well too. Yeah, but
it's something that you have. There has to be
too.
a balance, but then that's the problem when people take loans and you're not putting it into investing something that will yield money for you.
I think it's worse at the subnational. It's far worse at the subnational.
Which is why it should be managed, Debt Management Office. Well, let's go to The Guardian this morning. Cost of healthy diet rises by 45% in 6 months. This rise is faster than general inflation and food inflation. The report is produced by the National Bureau of Statistics. The main drivers of this increase are vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, starchy staples. Animal source foods are the most expensive as at June, of course, including fruits and vegetables. I mean, this is worrying, and I think we live this every day. Bananas, we used to buy a bunch of banana for maybe 500, 600 naira. Today, 2,000, in fact, 3,000 the last time I tried to buy a banana, 3,000 naira. It was shocking. So this is going to affect the health of families generally. It is worrying.
You know, it is connected to this protest that's going on now.
No, but that's the main reason.
That's the main reason now. Anti-hunger protests. You have food inflation at over 40% currently. There's a statistic that says that over 60% of disposable income is paid, it goes to food alone.
Yes.
So what do you have left when you spend about 60% of your income on food? And that's why you see people point to the streets. Now, the government has said, they're going to allow imports for about 6 months. Duty-free and all that, import waivers, no VAT, bring in staples, like rice paddy and all that, to just try and stabilize the price. They said, they're bringing down the price of rice to about 40,000 naira. We've not seen that yet, but I think the government really needs to act fast, because if this sort of protests continue, it's going to be crazy. Yesterday, there's a video posted by Premium Times. Soldiers were confronting youths protesting in Gombe, and they were telling the soldiers, come and take over government. We want you to come and take over government. You're prodding them to embark on a coup. They were shouting Tinubu, Bamai, Bamai, that they didn't want Tinubu again. That was around Kugbo, just inward Asokoro yesterday too. So things are spiraling out of control.
The point is
food. You remember too the, what's it called, the French Revolution?
Yes.
Food was the tipping point.
Bread
especially.
Bread.
Yes.
Basic staple.
Exactly. When the queen, that's what's her name now? Antoinette, Marie Antoinette was saying that if they cannot afford bread, let them go and eat cake.
Stones. Is it cake or stones?
Cake, she was saying, and people said, which one do you think is more expensive? So you need to be really careful.
How many people eat? Constance was talking about balanced diet. How many people eat balanced diet?
Yeah, no, but in the vegetables and fruits in Abuja, for instance, used to be readily available and accessible and cheap.
They are now expensive.
But that's what we're saying.
Expensive.
When you say...
I bought oranges yesterday. I said, I bought oranges, I bought pineapples, and I bought watermelon. I love watermelon. And I said, okay, give me orange, 100 naira. Do you know what the guy gave me? He gave me 2. 2. So I said, so you mean one is 50? I said, put one more. He says, I can't put one more. 2 oranges. People are not even licking. People are not even taking fruits. I mean, because this is part of what you use to complete your diet.
Yes.
Yam is 4,000.
Which 4,000? Don't say 4,000.
No, it was with Bego. After I begged him.
Yeah.
That was when he
accepted
accepted
the person.
The person tried.
Oh, definitely I do.
Oh, okay.
The person tried. I was telling them
4,000 for one. I said it was very small.
The last
tuber.
I bought one small thing.
Yes.
4,005, and it was by beg.
Okay,
so it's a dangerous trend
let's
that
stop
the
begging.
government really doesn't want.
Let's stop begging and go to the next story. Punch this morning. Punch. House help admits killing Justice Ajumogobia's daughter. This is according to a police source. The deceased was killed at their home in Lagos. Her body was discovered outside the gate of their residence. 3 of the domestic staff, driver, security, and house help have been arrested. The girl was murdered in her room and the body was dragged outside. The deceased was a doctor and she had recently married. Such a heart-wrenching story. Investigations are ongoing. Our hearts go out to Justice Rita Ojumagobia and her family. Really, very tragic story.
It's really saddening, really. I've been, I mean, Justice Ojumagobia is a very popular judge in this country, and I was very shocked to read that. And of course, it speaks to the dangers and the risks of employing criminals as domestic staff. When I was a crime reporter at Punch, I think some 14 years ago or 13 years ago, there was a similar story I did. It was also a lady alone in the house. She was strangled by her security guard, who, was from, I think, Benin Republic, stole everything and then fled. But the Lagos State government, and the police did a fine job then. They were able to repatriate him and prosecute him. Also, there was another one, an elderly woman in her 60s, in her 70s actually, and her daughter was abroad. She had just one child. The daughter was abroad. Sorry, take your time. The daughter was abroad, and the woman was living alone with her driver and her housemate, and they connived to kill this woman. Wow. They withdrew all the money in her ATM, in her account and all that, and the daughter couldn't reach her. That was when she reported to the police, and they got these people arrested. So, hiring domestic staff, one has to be very, 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 very careful.
They have to be properly screened.
Yeah, you have to be screened. Maybe use a reputable agency, to get them. That's not a guarantee that you're safe anyway, but at least I think it shows that you at least just do your own due diligence. It's very sad. My heart goes out to Justice
let me bring you into the next story. Let's go to the international headlines. We don't have much time. We're looking at Daily Graphic from Ghana. Scrap 5% VAT on real estate industry. The Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, GREDA, has called on the government to remove 5% value-added tax usually charged on estate development. This will make it easier for developers to develop and for buyers to own homes, according to this association. They said the VAT has exacerbated real estate issues in addition to current economic challenges. The real estate industry needs a bailout, according to GREDA, and they are asking that this be discussed with the president. I mean, everyone needs a bailout, it will seem, whether it's in Nigeria, whether it's in Ghana. But the problem is real. Home ownership is usually outside the reach of the average person, especially when there are no provisions for long-term mortgage. So it's tough, indeed.
It's interesting. This is not a today thing. Even in 2016, this is 2024. Even in 2016, they were asking for this. Now they are saying that Bawumia MPP party, who Bawumia is their candidate, they said this is one of his campaign promises. So they're saying he should hurry up and make sure it's implemented. This will help people get accommodation at a relatively low rate, as it were. So it's quite interesting. Things are happening in Ghana, actually. The other time it was roads, the app, and now it's the developers are asking for reduction in the VAT.
No, removal of the VAT completely.
Remove it completely,
completely. And when you look at Nigeria too, the real estate industry is facing a lot of difficulties. Today, when you're looking for accommodation, because I was looking recently in Abuja, for instance, a 2-bedroom apartment that used to cost like 2.5 million naira, today is like 7 million. Or even more than 7 million. No, it's not a joke what is happening in Nigeria today, in Abuja that I know specifically. Houses are now out of reach. You go for a 3-bedroom, they are calling 10 million, 15 million, and people are paying for this, and then you wonder.
How are they getting the money from?
I don't know. And then it's become a very complicated situation. They give you a form to fill. Inside the form, they ask you for your state of origin, they ask you for your religion, they ask you for where you worship, they ask you for your job.
How does that matter?
It's getting out of hand in Abuja.
In fact, one of the things that annoys me a lot about it, because recently too, I moved as well. You pay for agency, you pay for agreement, you pay 20%.
Yes, it used to be 5%.
Yes, now it's now 20%. Yes. And these people, they formed a network of agents. They're not registered. They don't pay tax to the government, actually. So that sector needs to be really sanitized too, because they are the ones that also, they play a very huge role in hiking the cost of, hiking rent. Some of them will tell you that if you say, oh, I cannot afford it, they'll say, well, okay, don't worry. I'll get a Yahoo boy the Yahoo boy can afford that place. Yes. So that's what you see happening. And these guys can pay 2 years, 3 years rent at once. So
I don't know why people are still asking for 2 years. In Lagos State, I think it was
happening.
made a law that you cannot ask people for 2 years rent.
Oh, they do that now here. They do that in so many other places. And in Lagos, it's done secretly, but it's not as rampant, it's not as common as before.
I don't know what to say.
Some will even ask you to pay in dollars.
So
I don't just know. It's a horrible situation. You were talking about diet. There was 60% of food, so there was no health there. There was no accommodation there. You're not talking about school fees. For those of us who have daughters and sons who were training in school, who were almost not having anything left after paying school fees. And you're talking about accommodation. You're talking about it's a horrible situation.
So accommodation gobs a substantial part of one's income, in addition to food now.
You know, that's why Lagos State government is trying to work out this initiative where people are allowed to pay monthly.
Monthly.
You know, as it's done in developed societies. But there's some people who say, look, I prefer to just pay
1 year.
Because you can gather, then you forget about paying
because
rent.
Most
and all
of
that.
a bulk of Nigerian workforce are not in the formal sector. You know, they earn daily. So they prefer that, okay, you know what, let me just put all my money together and then pay for
the people that are crying for monthly, you see, because at times, because someone said money does not wait. Money is always looking for something to spend on. So keeping money is difficult. So ability to save. In fact, the guy that carried me yesterday said, sir, I was earning upwards of 700 and some thousand. I lost my job. Now I'm doing Uber, and so I'm annoyed. In fact, the guy was saying, let's go on a war. I said, you're a young man. You have not seen war before.
Yes.
Please don't talk about war.
Right.
You know. And he said it's terrible. It's hard to save.
Right.
What people who want yearly is so that you're able to put things together, and then go and rest and all that. Things are really, there are so many areas.
One more story from Graphic, Daily Graphic. Gold exports to yield $10 billion by year end for Ghana. Well, Ghana is a gold exporting country, but
that's
again,
Gold Coast.
yes, but again, the old story that African countries concentrate on exporting their raw materials, without getting as much value if you were exporting finished products.
Yes, Ghana used to be known as the Gold Coast, so this was their primary export. And you're right in that regard too. It's the same in so many African countries. That's why Dangote was saying last week that it's only Algeria and Libya that do not export their oil in raw form. That they're the only ones that export refined products. And so that's a story in so many African countries. But I think a change is beginning to come gradually. I think Uganda, some 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh yeah, the president there has woken up.
Has now said that, you know what, you can no longer export raw materials, you must do value addition.
Yes.
Nigeria is trying to do that too. I know Mr. Dele Alake was saying that for lithium too and other products, but
that's to compel the foreign mining companies to set up shop
something here at least before you export.
Is what it should be.
That's what it should be like, because we're losing so much money.
The moment we begin to do it, not just for Uganda, like you said, I think African, at this point, I think they should come together. I think there's talk about that, to really sit down and agree amongst themselves to develop their own country. Vis-a-vis, that's why you're having, you have BRICS, now you're trying to have some other associations so they can cut off from depending on maybe EU, America, or China, which is important for trade particularly.
It's complex. And when we have the African Union, it hasn't, it hasn't achieved as much as the founding fathers would love, but it's what it is. Let's move on to Washington Post. Americans freed by Russia returned to the U.S. and the U.S. reporter others released in a complex landmark multi-country prisoner exchange with Russia. There were 3 Americans. One of them was Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. He had been held for more than a year and was charged for espionage. He was sentenced last month to 16 years in prison. And you're a reporter. Can you imagine being sentenced to 16 years in prison? Your life has ended.
Oh,
hasn't
yeah.
it?
For doing your job.
For doing your job.
Yes.
It's still part of the whole, international politics between both sides, between Russia and the United States. Very, very, very possible that this reporter had nothing to do with espionage and all that, but they just needed something to hold him by. And that's why U.S. always issues travel advisory to their citizens. Do not visit Russia unless it is absolutely necessary. Do not visit North Korea. Do not visit Iran, Iraq. These are countries that can easily use their citizens as a bargaining chip. And so, well, as a journalist, you have to travel. So
yes.
it's unfortunate, but at least thank God that it's out. I think Trump was saying yesterday that, why did it take them so long? That if I was the one in charge, I would have gotten the guy out within weeks and all that. So
the guy was there. He didn't do anything. He said he has got 59 people out without paying. He was debunked yesterday that he has done it and paid. and I think it was Pierre, the secretary, who came to say within Biden's administration they have got 70 released, and that they didn't pay a dime. And he didn't even talk. He was just angry because he had been saying that from the first day in office, I'll make sure that I get Gaskovich out. This is a big one for Biden and Harris, particularly at this time that election is around the corner.
And guys, one of the poignant things in this story is that their countries, or their country, the U.S., or whatever journalists in the developed world, always fight for them. Are you confident that your country will fight for you in a similar circumstance, Eniola and Dandi?
Well,
as journalists.
Well, I won't really throw the Nigerian government under the bus, because we've seen how they've been able to repatriate a lot of people free of charge, from Libya and from other wartime countries.
Wasn't it a private company that offered their plane to repatriate Nigerians?
Government actually pays these people
and uses them.
Uses them actually. So in a way, I remember the lady who was framed 2 years ago in Saudi Arabia. She had gone for Hajj and someone had put drugs into her luggage, and she the Nigerian government went all out to help her. So I won't really say Nigerian government will abandon you. They've tried in some areas, but in some other areas too, they've been found wanting.
And then companies as well. This was actually a 6 or 7 country, and there was talk about this is what Putin does. He uses it as a trade, because one of the people released is an assassin, known assassin that kills for Vladimir Putin. He was also released, but I mean, it's neither here nor there. It's straight by butter. We love our people so much, and we want to get them out. And so I guess that's where we'll begin to call it.
That's what we have for you today.
A wrap on the program. Thank you so much, Constance, and of course, Enelia Kinketu, who you have to wake up to. Come, just like come, Constance.
we got the memo today. We're wearing black. You're out.
I don't say that. All right, that's it on Daybreak, a paper review. Thank you for watching.